The Cubs offseason continues to roll on, and the question is, what moves are they going to make to improve this team? And are they willing to trade their top prospect, Owen Caissie, an outfielder in an already crowded outfield, and some contracts that aren't real easy to move? As a matter of fact, some of them impossible. We're going to talk about that, the risk of trading Owen Caissie, what that could mean to the organization, but the reward that the Cubs could get back. They better get a good price back for Owen Caissie, because it could be one of those trades that burns the Cubs long term. We're going to get into that right now on the Cubs Baseball channel. Like, subscribe, thumbs up. Let's get this party started. Go Cubs. Peace to everybody. Mick Gillispie. Welcome to the Cubs Baseball channel. Appreciate all of you guys being there. And don't forget, you can catch us on the social medias everywhere at Cubs Baseball channel. So thanks. I'm at Broadcaster Mick on Twitter. All right, let's talk about the deal that the Cubs have going on right now, because it really is a sticky situation with their outfield. And the issue is that the Cubs have three big-time prospects that are in AAA that are going to need a spot. They have another big-time prospect that's already in the major leagues. They have two guys signed to contracts that have no trade clauses, and then they got another guy they're paying $30 million for, and they really don't have a position for him to play. Yeah, pretty interesting, right? And so as we move through the offseason, the other thing that we're finding out is that it appears that the Cubs ownership is not going to pull out the purse strings this season in free agency. And maybe they're looking at, hey, we just paid Dansby Swanson. He's an eighth batter hitting, in the eighth spot, like a 240 hitter, and we're paying him $177 million, right? Maybe don't feel good about that one. We're paying Ian Happ to play left field. He's getting paid over $16 million, and he's got a no trade clause. And we got three other guys that could do a comparable job, but would be paid maybe $1 million or maybe less, right? We got the best outfield prospect in baseball defensively in Pete Crow Armstrong, and someone that we saw come into his own at the end of last year, playing center field. No room for Mike Tauchman, which a lot of you guys really wanted him to stick around and play for the Cubs. Did a nice job. You got Seiya Suzuki, another guy with a no trade clause and signed for a couple seasons. And then Cody Bellinger, who opted back in. We didn't think he would do it. He opted back in at $27.5 million. The problem is that there's really not an outfield spot for him unless you move him to right field, and then maybe you DH Seiya Suzuki. But what about the prospects? Owen Caissie is, in my opinion, by far the best of the outfield prospects. Alexander Canario would say is second, and Kevin Alcantara of that group is third, the Jaguar. You're starting to hear rumblings that maybe the Cubs, and we heard this at the GM meetings, were willing to trade Owen Caissie. Owen Caissie is the guy that the Cubs got for Yu Darvish, and he was a 19-year-old, I think, at the time, and he has worked his way up through the minor leagues. He's a big right fielder, got very good outfield ability, takes great angles on the ball, good arm, smart ball player. He is an exceptional hitter with power, barrels everything up. Some weaknesses that big-time prospects have. Basically to me, it's soft stuff down middle end, coming from right-handers to lefties. But as he adjusts to that, when he hits the ball, he makes things happen. And he is, to me, the Cubs' most consistent and most well-rounded prospect. And I think he's got the potential to be a long-term big league player. Now, the Cubs have to decide, what does that mean? Does that mean he's going to be a big-time star player? Or is he going to be a guy that comes to the big leagues, has some success, and and then fades away? I don't know. I think that he has the potential to be a guy that plays, 10 years in right field somewhere. And we, being from Toronto, being from Canada, not far from Toronto, the Blue Jays looking to make some trades. Who knows? I mean, he could go there. He's a Canadian baseball player who really advocates for the game. It'd be a great fit. And the Cubs need a middle of the bat line hitter. They need somebody to come in there and put in the middle of the lineup and put fear in pitchers, knowing that, hey, that you come in here, we're going to do some damage. They really didn't have that last year. You would look at the lineups and you always felt like that there really wasn't a whole lot of scare in the middle of the lineup. So could the Cubs trade an Owen Caissie and get that? Would the Blue Jays be willing to part with Vlad Guerrero Jr., who would certainly give you that? But if they did, you got him on 1 year and then he's a free agent. So you got to make decisions here. I think if the Cubs trade Owen Caissie, they really have to get value back in return. And it's a big time risk of a trade because he is so talented. But it's interesting when you read, publications like Bleacher Report, and they talk about Owen Caissie and the fact that the 22-year-old could potentially be traded and what that would look like. To me, the bigger issue, though, is that you gave Ian Happ and Seiya Suzuki no trade clauses, because that really handicaps your ability to be able to move players around. And to me, if all things were on the table, the guy that you would trade is Ian Happ. You'd get decent value for him. He's a Gold Glover, 3-time Gold Glover now. He puts up good number. He terrorizes the teams in the division, and and certain teams have a really tough time getting him out. The problem that I have is, first off, it's consistency, because it's like he's either really up here or he's really down here. He's got to get a little bit more consistent across the board. But the other thing is that you could put these other players in left field and you're really not losing a whole lot. Maybe he's better defensively. Maybe his bat's a little bit better. But when you talk about putting a roster together based on money, let somebody else pay that guy and then go ahead and put a Canario in there. Go ahead and move a Bellinger over to left. And then you got a spot for Owen Caissie, right? Use the DH spot. These guys are all going to be the prospects are all going to be fighting it out in spring training for roster spots. And the other thing that's going to be interesting to me is to see what AAA looks like for the Cubs, because they really have pushed these guys up through the system. And that's how it's done in baseball now. Back 10, 15 years ago and long before that, you wanted to slow their progress through when you knew that your big league team had spots that weren't available, just so that those guys would be a little bit more seasoned by the time they got to the big leagues or AAA. So that's not the deal with the Cubs. I mean, they got all these guys, and then don't forget about the infield situation: Matt Shaw, James Triantos, and maybe some other guys that could be pushing as well for spots. So the Cubs could do a deal. They could easily trade Owen Caissie. Maybe you trade Owen Caissie and even Michael Busch if you get a first baseman back, like a Vlad Guerrero. But you don't see a lot of these. Now, when the Braves traded for Matt Olson, they did the trade and sign. Remember that? And he signed to replace Freddie Freeman over at first base. If you're going to trade away those kind of players, you're going to have to get the trade and sign back. And could the Cubs even be that creative to get a Vlad Guerrero Jr.? And would that even happen knowing the money available, right? All the rumblings right now are that until the Cubs trade Cody Bellinger, that they're really not going to make moves that are going to include a lot of money. Well, we'll see, though. I mean, remember last year we didn't hear the Cubs in the Shota Imanaga sweepstakes, and then when it was all said and done, there he was a Cub. So we'll find out. But interesting, man. I love the hot stove season. I'm waiting for that sign where I'm like, oh, I see where these guys are going. And I feel like that for Jed Hoyer, this is such a big offseason for him. I mean, his whole career is on the line, because there is not another owner that's going to give this guy the reins of his organization. This is it. Unless he turns it around, if he fails this year and they don't re-sign him, he'll be a special assistant or an assistant GM for the rest of his career, which is what he's really done well. So he's got to prove that he can do this job. And honestly, I was sitting back and wondering if they were going to give him that opportunity, but it appears they are. So, we wish him the best. But this is one of those tough ones, because, you've got to have now the way that an organization looks at this. And I'll say this before I end the video today, is that you got to have internal scouting, right? And I know, like there's this push to get rid of scouts and all this stuff. Your internal scouting has to be good if you're going to make a trade for someone like an Owen Caissie, because you'll see a lot of these deals that are made, and then all of a sudden the guy turns out to be a star player. You had him and you traded him. So are you sure that he's not going to be able to figure out the soft stuff in and down? That's the question that you got to ask yourself. And maybe there's some other stuff that they don't like. But look, I'm telling you, I've seen the guy play an entire season. He's got a lot of talent, and he is really good. And when he makes contact, the ball moves. He's clutch. He's a consistent hitter. He's a really good outfielder. His head's on straight. Really like this guy. Really like him. And so I think that, just kind of comparing him to the other prospects that have come through the Cubs system, the Chris Bryants, the Javi Baez's, and all of those guys, like he's on that level. Maybe he's not Chris Bryant, maybe he's not Javi Baez, but he's just one of those guys that turns heads. That he gets the big hits. His defense is really good. He's a lot more consistent than those guys. You feel like when you look at him that he's going to be a player who's in the major leagues and contributing for a long time. And then his work ethic's that way. He's like, 21, 22 years old, and he's, kind of put together like a big league vet. So anyway, who knows what's going to happen? Who knows if they're going to make this move? You guys get in the comment section. Let me know. We'll be keeping an eye on it. We're getting ready for a big week here on the Cubs baseball channel. Something breaks, we'll jump on. So make sure you hit the bell, but like, subscribe, thumbs up. Thanks for being here, guys. And let's get after it. Hot stove week. Go Cubs.